let's look at the man himself, the winner of YCS Indianapolis, Steven Santoli's deck profile, and we're gonna just watch it and watch him explain the stuff that he did.
What up, YouTube? Asian Persuasion here, and I'm here with my boy Bortle, and we're also here at YCS Indy with the first place winner. Introduce yourself, and what did you play, my friend?
My name's Steven. I won YCS Indy with Rescue Ace, Sinful Spoils.
Nice.
For some reason, Konami Vlog didn't put it on initially, and so all the EU streamers were losing their mind, thinking I was just insane not playing it, instead of just assuming that.
Okay. All right. I will say, we were reasonable in thinking that you didn't play it, because the stream, the coverage literally had freaking 11 Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace listed, and then yours as only Rescue Ace. Also, the only reason we assumed that you weren't playing it is because you're freaking Steven Santoli and you brought Exosystem to the Worlds qualifier. So there's literally, you have no business complaining. Like, we didn't. How are we supposed to know?
I played it, so I took great laughter out of that one. But yeah, I played this deck. I think it's probably the best deck of the format, not by a super large margin, but it's what I was practicing last format, and considering how strong it was, I figured I'd play it for this event as well.
Definitely. And before that, check out this trophy of his. You know, he has to remember this in his profile. He got the ultra rare prize card trophy, you already know. And yeah, man, let's go ahead and get into the profile and see what you play, man.
So my theory with this deck list was
It's a little sped up, yeah.
that consistency is good, and engine is good. Like the strong engine, if this deck goes second very well as long as you don't draw the traps, or HQB, even HQ is fine in some scenarios. So I just want to max out on a lot of my starters just because playing is good, and it pushes through hand traps a lot really easily. So I played 3 Earthridge standard. I played 3 Hydrant still. People cut this down to 2. I think it's reasonable to play 2. I don't think it's wrong to play it. But like I said, I just want consistency. This card isn't great by itself. With any other combination of cards, Allure, Emergency, like it plays for the majority of hand traps. It's a good discard because, again, you can do shenanigans by banishing it. So I play.
This is the one thing that I find funny about Rescue Ace, is that the entire deck is focused around Hydrant, but Hydrant itself is not a good 1-card combo, which I find that funny. It's not really, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I just think it's funny. So yeah, the thing is, you can play 2, I think, because it's not a 1-card combo, but the thing about it is that, like, it's gonna be part of any 2-card combo pretty much. Like, it searches a Rescue Ace card, which is like, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good card, and I think playing 3 is reasonable.
3. I'll probably continue to play 3 going forward. I do side the second one out a lot. Going second. All my engine pieces, I don't side out any going first. If you're going first, you want all your engine, and you're just switching up tech cards. 2 Turbulence, 2 Preventer, I think pretty standard.
Standard.
One thing to keep in mind with Reserve, second threat comes up a lot, especially when they go to, when they're picking apart your boards or half boards. If they go to pop something or negate something, you can emergency up second turb, and then it's a pop.
Also, Mesla's mad, and thank you for the time.
It's really good. It's important to keep in mind what you're keeping banished, and always have something deal something back off of it. Then I play 3 Impulse somewhere.
It's in there.
Wait, is it? What did you say? 3 or 2? Tengu, thank you for the 13.
Off of it. Then I play 3 Impulse.
3 Impulse.
Somewhere.
Okay.
It's in there.
There's 3 Impulse in here somewhere.
It's all good.
And the
Okay, it is 3 Impulse. 3 Impulse. I am not as deep into the Rescue Ace testing as I maybe should be, or I mean, I don't have any events coming up, so that's why I haven't been like practicing Rescue Ace or whatever. There's been a decent amount of people that I heard saying you don't need to play 3 Impulses, which I guess is fair. Like, I've seen a lot of people play like 1 or no Impulse at all. Yeah, the third one's missing. Whatever. He was playing 3 and a Fire Engine, right? Quantal said it's either 1 or 3. Okay, let's just listen.
So the reason I decided to play this at 3, because a lot of people are thinking about cutting down, is in any mid-range matchup or control matchup, this card is the best card in your deck. It allows you to pull ahead with Engine, which means that when they're trying to cut you off with Engine, it just becomes very, very overwhelming. And a lot of people against this deck, I shouldn't say people against this deck doesn't have good choke points, so you just kind of have to hit them early and hope it's enough, because once it starts playing and starts going, there's just so many ways back to turbo and so many ways back to your power plays, and this just ensures you get there. In the mirror, it's insane because you just set up your opponent's turn, and like you saw, if you watched the feature match in the finals, I broke the full board game one, so even without this, but if you have this, it's even easier. You're just pushing through with the engine. The parts of the engine that go second are really, really strong, and you want to always have them.
Okay.
You do side out in some matches.
That's fair. It's like, I think that's what it comes down to, right? I think that's what it comes down to. Impulse is kind of like this awkward thing between, I feel like it's situated between a non-engine card and an engine card, right? Because it doesn't really stop your opponent from doing anything, but it still is dependent on your opponent for like triggering it. So it's kind of like I guess it's comparable to something like Phantasme, right? It's like the in-engine Phantasme or Haveness, right? That can lead to stronger plays, but doesn't necessarily. Which it can be good, right? Sometimes you really just want to get to, like, your opponent interrupts you with they set up a board and whatever, and in order to play better into it, Impulse can help. It can be a lot of things, right? It can be extender, it can help breaking boards, yada yada yada. But it is dependent on your opponent to trigger it, and it is also not a starter card going first, pretty much at all. So I think it's fair to like it. I think it's fair to not like it. I don't know if it's 100% necessary, but I personally think it's at least an intriguing card to me. It's a card that I would like to be playing in my deck, right? If I'm playing a Rescue Ace deck and there's a card that off of my opponent's actions gets to extend my plays, I think that is a card you would want to put into your deck, unless you don't have the space for it or you really needed to play other cards instead. Which I guess is the same issue, right? Not having space for it. So, I understand wanting it into your deck for sure.
Like the heavy combo matchups you can set out for my hand traps, but other than that, I think it should be at 3. I play the Debuster package. So I play one which card's also insane for consistency. The reason I play more of this is because if it gets interacted with, it's just a -1. So if I summon this by discarding something without this in circulation, then you just lose a card for no reason. So I don't want to play multiples of it because it's the neg like that. And the deck's consistent enough, I think.
Which is, I guess, this point I don't completely agree with, because of course opening the quick play spell is better than opening the witch, right? And so opening the witch alone can be underwhelming. However, if the witch gets interacted with, that's the thing. The argument that I have an issue here with is, if the witch gets interacted with, it loses you a card because you don't have this thing to replace it, is not really true, because even if you have the sinful spoils, and then your witch gets interacted with, you don't get to draw a card with the sinful spoil because you have to put this back, right? If this gets veilered or impermed, for example, even if you had this beforehand, it still doesn't replace the card. Like, you don't get the card back later. In that sense, I think it's simply a matter of, this is the minimal package you have to run. Okay, you have to run 1-3-1. That is the minimum, and you can run this. At this point in deck building, you have to ask the question, do I need more starters or not, right? If you want more starters, more Black Witches is an option. You can go higher on Black Witches because it's better to draw a Black Witch than to not draw a starter at all. Or if you get hand trapped, it's very good to have the Black Witch as a backup, for example, right? And I think it's fair to be playing more of the Black Witch if you feel like your deck's not consistent enough and you want more. Because there is no other, like, there's no really other cards you can play for consistency other than that get you to the Hydrant, other than more Diabellstar, right? You can cut Hydrant to 2 to have 2 Witch. You could do that, something like that. But I think at this point in time, we don't have to decide what's correct, because correct is a weird statement in deck building sometimes, when it just comes to, this is it's not really an objective thing on when a deck is consistent enough, right? You're kind of always leveraging that, you're always like wandering on the edge between like consistency and power, right? Like, do I need my deck to be more consistent, or do I need my deck to be more powerful or more flexible or whatever, right? If I'm putting more Diabellstar the Black Witch in my deck, my deck's gonna be more consistent, but Diabellstar the Black Witch is not the best starter the deck has, because like he's saying, you're investing cards, it's more vulnerable to certain interruptions, and so on and so forth, right? And so I think Diabellstar the Black Witch is a phenomenal card in this deck, but if you think the deck is consistent enough with one copy, then you don't have to be playing more. If you think the deck needs more starters, then you should be playing more. As simple as that.
I think sometimes you get hand trapped out, but I don't think adding more of these necessarily fixes those issues super large amounts. Going second, you usually, if you open one, you won't hold this till later, because it's more likely that this is going to resolve, and so you get the draw to dig for more ways of playing through. And then rescue spells, so 3 emergency, HQ alert, rescue, extinguish, contain.
this is the standard, and I think this should be the standard. Honestly, I've seen people play the trap card. I'm not super convinced of the third trap card. I don't even know what it's called. I'm pretty sure this lineup should be standard and is standard for good reason. I like this lineup a lot. I think this is the perfect way to play the Rescue Ace cards.
Like I said, I was playing this all last format.
Reinforce can come up. I did not say it can't come up. I'm not saying it cannot come up. I'm just saying that I think this is better. It's better to not play it because I think the amount of times that the card comes up does not outweigh the risk of drawing the card and it being a bad draw. As long as like that's basically what you need to understand is a card that is an option for one of your cards in the main deck, right? Like the Turbulence gets you all those cards for free. So having those cards in your deck is good as long as you don't draw them. Like you never want to draw a card like that. Sometimes you can make use of them even if you draw them, but usually you don't want to draw them. And that means you should minimize those as long as you can still get enough value out of your Turbulence. And I think, at least from what I've seen on stream, every single time, even in the decks without Reinforce, the Turbulence was getting enough value. The Turbulence was getting enough value for Steven in all of the feature matches we saw, for example, or in all of the other, like in none of the feature matches where Turbulence resolved, it felt like the Reinforce was necessary for them to win the game. They won the game off the back of Turbulence regardless of whether they had Reinforce or not, right? And when that is the case, when a card is just an option in your deck for Turbulence, but it's not really necessary because Turbulence wins you the game anyways, and it's just a bad draw, you shouldn't be running it. You shouldn't be running it. Risk against reward is not a good deal in that case.
Tried ratios of like siding out one of these, siding out the HQ, and I just learned to keep all of them in every game. You go second, doesn't matter if you're playing against Exodia, XDK, you're keeping them all in. They come up, and you want the Turbulence to be as strong as possible, and you need this for your grind game. So yes, it sucks to have these kind of like, this draw isn't bad, these draws are completely fine. It sucks to kind of have 3 Garnets in your deck that are subpar draw, especially going second, but if it happens, it happens. I think a lot of times you can still hand to death, you still have a lot of tech space, so it's not the end of the world, but you don't want to try minimizing engine in order to have more tech spots. That is not the point of this deck. If you want more tech spots, play a different deck. And then
no, you're good, Razor. Yeah, all good.
Everyone's gonna lose their mind because people hate playing 2 ofs, but the deck's consistent enough. I decided to play 2 because it's a little bit more consistent in top. I never want to open 2 though. If I open 1, cool, let me dig. If I don't, then that's fine. You never resolve the second one, and a lot of times you want to push for game shot, or you have a limitation on the extra deck, which you'll see later. So it's just, I see it the one of occasionally. Other than that, it's fine without.
I don't actually completely hate cutting down on prosperities in some amount in this deck, simply because he is right in the point that like the extra deck in this deck, you can definitely pros for 3 or 6, but after that I feel like it becomes a problem to use any further prosperities, because the deck does need a fair chunk of its extra deck in a lot of games, or it does become weaker if you don't have a bunch of your extra deck available. I think Prosperity is especially awkward in this deck because now with the Diabellstar package, you have a package in your deck that wants to draw a card. You want to be able to draw a card off of these cards. So Prosperity at that point, you know, the deck got significantly more consistent. The deck now draws cards sometimes, which in return makes Prosperity weaker in the deck, but you could still feel more comfortable with some amount of Prosperities in your deck, right? Maybe that amount is 3, maybe that amount is 2. Once again, we're settling for just an amount of consistency that we're happy with here, you know? I'm pretty sure this deck is over 40 cards too, so like he could have just played 40 and no Prosperities, but he was basically like, okay, no, I want to go slightly over 40 and add the Prosperity for consistency, which also makes sense, by the way. It makes sense, like 42. Okay, that's actually the perfect example, because this is a 42 card deck with 2 Prosperities. For example, if you're playing this deck just at 40 without Prosperity, one thing that's also going to happen slightly more often is you're going to draw those one of Rescue Ace spell traps that you don't want to draw slightly more often. Instead, you could just play some amount of Prosperities, which kind of dilutes the amount of times you draw the Rescue Ace cards, but it doesn't really dilute the amount of times you draw a starter card, because you can simply like Prosperity is technically a starter card, right? So I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with 2 Prosperity in this deck.
and then tech spots, 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 3 Imperm. So I think these are kind of standard, the Ashes and the Imperm.
Ash, I find I understand Ash a lot. Imperm is also decent this format. Veiler I find interesting.
Imperms, obviously this is like the best hand of the format. Best hand
although I also wouldn't really know what other hand trap I would play. If I wanted more hand traps next to Ash and Imperm, it could be Veiler. I could see it being Veiler.
But almost every format, Impermanence is good because it plays around talents. And then I decide Veilers over like Nib or anything else. I think that it's just the most flexible. And I think one of the problem with a lot of decks is if you let them start playing, then if you have Nib or a big blow hand trap, it just doesn't do enough. They've already played. Vestigrators can play through Nib once they start playing. Tier can play through Nib once they start playing. It's just that in other matchups, I find playing this, which is like a marginal card, it's not great, but it's always going to be useful. And I just have enough faith in my engine that's good enough that I don't need to try blowing my opponent out with insane deck cards.
I think that is reasonable. I think that is one of the things, that is one of the issues with like a super diverse format that we've talked about for like a while. There's so many decks that you have to prepare for that it is almost impossible to play a super impactful card for every matchup, right? You either have to go for a hand trap that is like kind of in the middle, that's kind of okay against everything, or you have to go for a card that is really good against some decks or really bad against others, right? And we've decided to go with like something that's like in the middle, which I think is a solid decision in a format like this. I think generally in super diverse formats, not always true, but generally in super diverse formats, my tip would be, or my advice would be to go for the safe picks in the main deck, right? Go for the cards that are consistent, that do something in every matchup in the main deck, and then focus on whatever you want to focus on in the side deck, right? That I think is I think that's a solid piece of advice for like super diverse formats. I think that's fair to say.
Tech cards I said I play 3 Econ.
Yeah,
It's like a
one, right?
staple of mine.
Best card of you.
It's insane. You just get so many 2-for-1 interactions off this because in the mirror or tier with Celic, or Beauty, like this, or even if you're just dodging Imperm, there's so many ways where they burn an interruption and then you chain this, take a monster. So now the Imperm.
This seemed insane going second in the finals because it was also the mirror match. Like being able to freaking econ your opponent's turbulence seems insane. This seems all right in a decent amount of matchups, I suppose, you know. So I can see this being nice.
Whatever they use didn't work, and you're forcing on something else, or you're just taking something from them.
So one thing I want to note here, is that we just saw a deck like 42 cards, 12 non-engine, because it was 9 hand traps, 3 enemies. That is, it's a decent amount, but it's not that much. It's not that much non-engine, and that's not a bad thing, because I think that speaks loads about the power of Rescue Ace, right? This is not a deck that gets carried to a top or a win by its non-engine, right? It doesn't really do that. This deck has significant like capabilities of playing through hand traps and playing through boards going second with its own engine, which I think is a very, very good thing in a super diverse format. Like, this deck has proven that it's capable of playing through boards or through hand traps with its own engine, which makes it, in a way, not super dependent on playing against the matchups you were expecting, right? Because if your deck, that's one thing. If your deck relies on non-engine so much to do stuff, then it's going to have a problem in a format where it's super diverse and your non-engine is not always good against every matchup, right? Not every non-engine is good in every matchup, and so decks that are dependent on non-engine are going to struggle in some matchups naturally. And a deck like Rescue Ace, which does not get carried by non-engine apparently, can perform really well, right? Because this non-engine is like it's solid cards, right? Veiler, Ash, Imperm, Enemy Controller, they're solid cards. But they don't auto-win any matchup outside of maybe like Branded or Lab with an Ash Blossom sometimes. But most of the time, like, it's just like Imperm prevents a little bit from every deck, but not that much. Ash prevents a little bit from every deck, but not that much. Veiler does the same kind of thing. Enemy is like a solid tool in most matchups. But you don't have any non-engine here that just completely carries any matchups, right? There's no, like, we don't have to rely on something like Droll or Nib or Droplet. Those kind of Dark Ruler, Evenly, those kind of things. We're not looking for auto-win buttons, right? We're not looking for auto-win buttons against some matchups that don't work against other matchups because we don't have to. Because the Rescue Ace deck is powerful enough to the point where it gets to outplay a lot of decks with just Engine, right? And the cool thing though is that we're not a deck that doesn't play non-Engine at all. Like I'm looking at Tearlament, for example. Tearlament is also one of those decks that tries to just push with Engine into boards, going second, and usually that, like, you know, the deck is strong enough against some matchups, but not against all matchups, because it has like Tearlament has like very little space for non-Engine, like almost like 5, I think is the standard. I want to say the 5 non-Engines. We can look at a standard tier list in a second. Maybe 6, right? It's like half the amount of non-Engine. So, and sometimes when I'm saying you're not dependent on non-Engine, generally in Rescue Ace, I'm not saying that you don't want it, right? Because sometimes you still really want to open that Ash for the opponent. Sometimes you really want to have that imperm for a specific choke point that your opponent isn't playing around or whatever, right? So something like being, I can't overstate how good of a quality it is in the current format to be a deck that isn't really relying on your non-Engine to carry you, but you still get to play 12 of them, just in case you want it, just in case it ends your opponent's turn, so on and so forth, right? Just in case your opponent is playing a deck that loses to Ash, just in case your opponent is playing into Imperm or Veiler and it ends their turn, right? Those are the things that Tearlament doesn't really have, right? Tearlament has to break the board with Engine pretty much every single time, even if they play against Branded that activate a Branded fusion, where you could end the game right there with a solid Ash Blossom. Tear doesn't really have that. But Rescue Ace does, right? Rescue Ace does. And I think that's cool. I think this deck is looking incredibly strong in the current format, in the environment, and a lot of the reasons are the ones that I just mentioned.
And it's so good with the Devil Star, because usually people feel pretty safe hitting the Devil Star with a contain or something in the mirror match, because you can't emergency to dodge. And then you just do this dodge, and then you just get more, like, you get a set, you get another draw from it, and then it forces out negate, or you just steal like their one Rescue Ace and then they just can't play.
Please ban mine. Thank you for the 12 months. Appreciate it.
I think it's fine though. The consistency isn't going to change that much. I guess I'll check first. I decided to play the Firewall package still. So this is a 6-card Firewall package. All these guys, I mean, Link Reaper's just fine by itself. All these guys essentially just climb into this guy sends this, which is Omni Spell and Trap Negate in the grave, and then on your opponent, you send in your turn. On your opponent's turn, you send this.
Okay, just very quickly, because this seemed to be like a kind of new thing that not everyone knew about. The way this works is like you use Reprodocus to make one of your level 4 lores a Cybers, then you turn that into Link Decoder. Then you make, I think, Protect Code Talker. Then the Link Decoder comes back because you made Protect Code Talker. Then you make Firewall Dragon. Then you get to bring back the Protect Code Talker from your graveyard in a way that it's co-linked to Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon then gets to add back a card from your graveyard, and you link into Terahertz. And Terahertz sends a D-Save Worm from your extra deck to the graveyard, which is while you control a Cybers, I think it's link 4 or higher, you get to negate a spell or trap that your opponent activates. There are different options for the extra deck in Rescue Ace. However, I think this is by far the best one that I've seen. Simply because it doesn't require you to play any bricks in the main deck, or any cards you don't really want to draw in the main deck. Which, there are other options, like you can play Jet Synchron in your deck and to make a couple of Synchros that have an Omni Gate. You can play the second place, I believe, play the Arc Nemesis cards as well. No, maybe not the second place. Someone played Arc Nemesis Eschatos. And there's a combo that can search it. I don't think it was the second place. I think it was the top 32 feature match that beat Yugioh. They got top 16. Yeah, I remember now. They played Nemesis Flag, I think, that they searched with the rank 4 Fire Monster. That's so funny about Rescue Ace is because most of its combos, all of the deck is main deck focused, right? The deck doesn't have any extra deck cards. The extra deck is completely open. You get a decent amount of bodies, and you just get to decide what the hell to do with them. You just decide what to do. We're gonna look at some of the options in a bit, but let me preface, I think this is the best one right now. This is the best one right now because, very, very simply said, Rescue Ace at this point in time, in its current iteration, in my opinion, does not lose to hand traps pretty much at all. The one thing it can lose to is cards that wipe your back row. Lightning Storm, Evenly, Feather Duster, and this gives you an Omni Negate for that. And that's why I like this one.
Which is just target card on field negate to the end of the turn. And the reason I decided to play this package instead of any of the other packages was there's two reasons. One, it plays no bricks, and two is that you never have to greed. And so the issue with a lot of the jet lines is that if you open like the Bellstar and Airlifter, both these cards get the Hydrant. And so if you let them get the Hydrant off the Airlifter, and then you Ash, Imperm, Baylor the Hydrant, this doesn't save your position at all. You can't get the Turbulence at all. And so anytime you go this for Jet Synchron, while you're going this for Hydrant, it means that you're gambling on your opponent not interacting with Hydrant. And the way to hand trap this deck is very weird. There's no consistent way. It's more gambling on what cards you think they have in their hand to play through it. And so people will do, I didn't say incorrect things, they'll just do different things because they try and play around different things. And when you gamble with this, they summon the Hydrant, and hit the Hydrant, you now get punished and you now lose. And it doesn't make sense for me to play another Garnet in the deck or a subpar draw at the same time of playing it worse into hand traps. And so I just decided to play this because anytime I open...
This just makes so much sense to me. Like, I don't think I could have said it better. At the point, like you have, I don't understand why you need to play Jet Synchron when you have a good line available to you that doesn't play the Jet Synchron in your deck. So you have more, you don't have to play that mediocre draw. And the line is very good because it negates board breakers that you could lose to, and it allows you to play better into hand traps because you don't have to like, you know, you don't have to save your Diabell Star to go for Jet Synchron later. And basically, if you're doing that, you're trying to do the one card Rescue Ace combo and then do another combo after. It's not like you're doing a 2-card combo. You're still doing 1-card Rescue Ace combo into adding a Diabell Star to it, which makes your 1-card combo pretty susceptible to hand traps.
Both of these, I know my Turbulence is resolving unless they have 2 hand traps, 3 hand traps.
That's what I mean.
This is always getting Hydrant, this is getting to Emergency, depending on
So you go, what you do is you just go Airlifter for Emergency, and this one gets you the Hydrant. And then when they interact with the Hydrant, you still have the Emergency in hand as a backup, basically, right? Like, you know, you just get to Turbulence, and if they Imperm Turbulence, you can dodge it with Emergency. If they Imperm Turbulence on summon, you just Emergency out another one. If they try to interact with the Hydrant, you can Emergency to dodge that, so on and so forth, right? It's just way better. I think it's way better.
Discard off this, I can get the Turbulence on the 4th summon. If not, I'm going SP with Turb. They nib. Okay, cool, tag out. Emergency summon Preventer revives the Turb. So that's just the reason for that. People complain about the non-extra spaces it takes, but these are, if I'm going first and I have Prosperity, I will banish everything but these and an SP. I do not need other cards in the extra deck. The cards are good. This is obviously board, Firewall. Like even this one, you're going for your half boards. Adding on Firewall with Protecto Cocker to add back is really good. And the other reason I play this full package of 8, because there's a 6 package, is because this combo gets you to add back, which means your Emergency is better because you can add back Preventer. So your Emergency summoning Preventer, sending the Preventer from your hand, you're getting a Book of Mood, so it's an extra interruption. Also, when you're doing half boards for climbing, this is follow up or adding back a hand trap or interruption. So I just like the flexibility. And then other tech cards, so 1 SP because, well, 2 SPs. 1, you always keep off Prosperity. This is 8 cards. This is the other card you keep off Prosperity. If you're going second, then you can banish more of those. It's fine. I usually go 1 to play on Imperm. If you don't have a way of extending through it, then there's no reason to play on Imperm. You just eat it and end on SP or IP into SP. But if you have good gas hands, especially when you open Dayball Star and Airlifter or Turbulence, then you have the luxury of being SP. And
this is the one thing out of this entire weekend that everyone predicted, and it happened exactly how everyone thought it would happen. SP Little Knight, freaking, you know, like that card just, it's so strong, man. It's so strong. Every single feature match, this card was, I think this was summoned in every single feature match almost, except for the Exodia FTK one, and it was incredibly good every single time. Like, this card is so powerful.
Force it out early and dodge. IP because it's a good card. With SP, and then the other ones I just thought were the most generic. Wolf, Gita, Access Code, and then 1 Typhon. So this card was pretty good throughout the weekend. It is one of those cards that you can't really theorize about because it's like, what game states will this come up in? And you're like, well, people full combo, and then like this doesn't really crack the board, so it's useless. But it just comes up in really weird grind games. People love theorizing about Yu-Gi-Oh! And going, oh, this always happens, and then this is on board, how you crack it. It's like so much nonsense happens. People open bricks, you hand trap them weirdly, like just things happen. And this is just one of those cards where it's not going to seem great in theory because there's no like real end board it cracks, but it just comes up in weird game states. And it's also nice because you can make your board, if you know you're playing against a deck that has a lot of 3,000 stack monsters, you can just slap this down on the end of it after you've cracked it, because then it's an additional floodgate for it. So I 100% recommend playing this going forward.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think this card should be in every single deck that doesn't have severe extra deck problems. Like, Typhon is one of those cards that is just... like he's saying, it doesn't come up in any like standardized combos or standardized whatever ways, but when you're going second and you're breaking boards, the games aren't always as standard as you think they are. When like someone has, like, you hand trapped someone in their combo and they played whatever, they made whatever board, and you start playing into it and so on and so forth. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh in practice is so different from Yu-Gi-Oh in theory. And I think in practice, this card is going to be so strong in so many situations, right? Because it's just so free. It just comes down for free. It's just like whenever you're done cracking your opponent's board, when you run out of options, you have one more on top. One more option that you now have. And I think that's so valuable.
Even if it doesn't seem good, if you start looking for the lines, then it feels a lot better. Then side deck, I just decided to play more hand traps. I didn't want to play breakers because a lot of people were on Omni Negates for Rust Grace, so I decided to hand trap them to death. 3 Droll, which is more for a Vanadium tier.
This is what I'm talking about earlier. Honestly, the more I'm watching, the less I'm surprised that he was able to win this YCS, because this deck is very good deck construction for a super diverse format. The main deck is super vanilla, just consistent, has some solid tech cards that aren't like auto win in any matchup, but they will do something against everything. And then the side deck has the bombs, right? The side deck has the stuff that you can specifically side for the matchups. And this is where the nibs are, the Drolls are, whatever else, you know. I like that deck building a lot.
I don't play one tier all in, but it hits your deck too much.
Shifters,
I was just, like, really scared of tier. Thanks for for that. So I decided to put this in last second, but even the one tier I played, I just decided I full cracked the board game 1, so I just decided not to put it in game 2, and it should just be like Druid Swarm or something. It could be really anything. And then 1 Pink, 1 Cowboy. I never made this. The mirrors, all matchups get really grindy. I actually went to time 3 times.
Is it even... how easy is it even to make this? Because you're not playing the Puzzlomino to make level 4s. I mean, you still can, I'm pretty sure, but is it even... it's like... you probably can. Airlifter plus emergency. Yeah, you need to like... because the only level 4 you play is Airlifter, right? So you have to like summon an Airlifter, and then you have to emergency for another Airlifter, something like that.
Today, never came up with this, but I don't usually go to time. I usually play pretty quickly.
But you could.
So this coming up was having this extra day have come up. The format it's good because you get a lot of back and forth games, but on the other side you have to play cards like this. The one nice thing though is if profiles start playing these cards, then at least encourages people to speed up, because otherwise you're gonna lose this, and that's not fun. 1 Duster, because that's the only back roll remove I played, and it fortunately didn't need any other ones. And then 3 Spellbound. I just wanted some Pearly hate. I played a fair bit of Pearly, so it was good. It answers the Yeep, which is the main thing, and it has some other applications versus like Flu and Chimera. Yeah,
very nice deck profile. I think very deserving win. Yeah, very nice, very cool.